Another way of looking at materialism, and another way of seeing it clearly, is to see it in terms of its departure from Aristotelianism. Okay. Now, for Aristotle, there are four causes. There are four basic reasons for a thing being the way it is. Okay. Those four causes. Now listen closely. This can get confusing, and I'm going to abbreviate it, but there are the material cause of a being, the efficient cause of a being, the formal cause of a being, and the final cause of a being. Okay, material, efficient, formal, and final. Now, the material cause of a being is that of which it's made. Alright, that of which it's made. And I will give examples in a second, so don't worry. The efficient cause of a thing, the efficient cause of a being, is the agency or art by which it is made. Okay? The agency or art by which it is made. The formal cause of a thing is that into which a being is made, or its identity, that which is itself. The most fundamental thing that answers the question, what is this thing? You can think of it as the definition of a being. The final cause is that for which a being is made, that for which it exists. Okay, now let's look at this applied first to something artificial and then to something natural. Alright, keep in mind that when we apply these concepts to an artificial being and then to a natural being, they only apply analogously to what's true of a artificial being is in some sense only true analogously of a natural being. So while it's most helpful to start out with an artificial being to understand what is meant by formal, final, material, and efficient causality, when we apply it to something natural, when we turn to something that human beings don't make, it applies but in a different way. Alright? So we're going to start out with something artificial so we can get the concept. Take an axe. Alright? An axe has material cause. It's the wood and steel, the lumber and the ore that's used to construct it. Let's just say we have a simple axe that's just wood and steel. Alright? That's the material cause of the axe. Pretty simple, straightforward in the case of something artificial, at least. Now we now turn to the efficient cause. The efficient cause is the agency and art by which the axe is made. In other words, the craftsmanship, including the craftsman, which puts together the axe in that form and arranges the matter in that way. Okay, so it's not just the agent, but it's his knowledge. Okay, because there isn't always an agent involved in efficient causality. At least not in the sense that we typically use the word. Right? So the formal cause of the axe, okay, it's the act of being the axe. It's the axe's identity as an axe. And the form of axe is imposed upon the wood and the steel in order to make that wood and steel into the form of an axe. Where is the form or the idea of the axe contained? In the mind of the axe maker. Alright? It's contained in the mind of the axe maker. It's only contained analogously in the axe itself. Strictly speaking, the axe is just an aggregation of wood and steel. It hasn't sprung up from the ground into an axe. It's an aggregation of wood and steel. Its formal cause is imposed on it from the outside. It's properly contained within the mind of the maker of the axe. The final cause of the axe is that for which the axe exists. In this case, cutting. In other words, cutting is what the axe is for. That's its final cause. Another way of saying final cause is its telos. Alright, So now that we see that this applies to an artificial object, let's move to a natural object, a natural being, and we'll see how this differs in the case of a natural being. We can do this even with a non-living being, but we'll start with something which is living because it makes it easier for most people. Let's take an oak. Alright, now an oak has a material cause. That is the primary matter of which it's composed. Alright. It has an efficient cause. That is the agency. In this case, it would be the agency of nature by which it's wrought, by which it's brought together. The formal cause is the identity intrinsic to it, and this is where we really see a difference between an oak and an axe. The oak, the identity of the oak, is contained in its substance as an oak. It's not imposed from the outside. It's contained within it. We can see this, for example, by the fact that an oak starts out an acorn. It drops into the ground. It becomes a little shoot. It grows up. It goes through all kinds of change. Now, that which is changing is the formal cause of the oak, the substance of the oak. However, what we see changing, the changes we witness, are what Aristotle calls accidental change. Changes in extension, changes in color, changes in place. These are changes happening to the oak, but the subject of the change is the formal cause, and that is the oak itself. And this change springs up from within the oak itself. It is the subject of its own change. And that's an important difference between the formal cause as it exists in something natural and formal as it exists in something material. The final cause of the oak is, at least, nourishing itself, growing, and reproducing. The final cause is the telos, or purpose, of the oak, with a lowercase p. Now this is somewhere where a lot of modern commentators and Aristotle get confused. They think that Aristotle is saying that when an oak has purpose, that the oak is that God made the oak to feed, so people can make houses out of it. Or that's the oak's purpose in some general, broad sense. But that's really not what Aristotle is talking about. The purpose of the oak, the telos of the oak, is being an oak, unfolding as an oak, and nourishing and reproducing itself. So this is very commonsensical. We see that it has a telos in the fact that it unfolds its form throughout its existence until it dies. It's going somewhere, and in nature things go somewhere, always or usually, always unless there's some kind of deformity. An oak starts out as an acorn and becomes an oak. It doesn't start out as an acorn and become a sunflower, because that's not its nature. Alright, so now that we've gone over this, we can see what it is, what materialism is claiming about reality. First of all, materialism says that in nature that there are only material and efficient causes. There are not formal or final causes. So only the matter and the agency by which it comes to be something is real. The formal cause and the final cause are not real, or are superfluous. Second of all, that there's no essential difference between an artificial and a natural form. Okay. Just as man imposes a artificial form upon certain material parts to make an axe, nature, through a much more sophisticated process, imposes through its laws and the laws governing its matter, various different forms on matter, and some of those sophisticated forms performing certain functions we call life, others we call water, etc. But these things are in themselves an aggregation of lower level matter imposed upon it by the working out of the laws of nature. And so in reality, nature is a kind of mechanism. It's artifice on a much more sophisticated scale, but it's not intentional artifice. It's the artifice of the laws themselves, which work out certain outcomes which might be very sophisticated, efficient and material causes. Alright, so this is very important to understand because it'll come up later, both when I'm refuting materialism and I'm refuting certain kinds of absurd theism and bad arguments for God, like William Paley's argument. So I'm going to leave you there for now, and hopefully this video turns out. Whenever I get to make the next section, I will. So I hope you guys are doing well. Bye-bye.